in the Vedantic framework, but Sri Aurobindo has filled some gaps which there were in this framework and he has made it more complete. Here, in Canto 2, it is not a metaphysical framework he gives, it's a psychological framework of the microcosm, of how the individual is constituted. What are the various parts of his being, where he normally dwells, from where all the resistance to higher life comes, and from where he can get aid to higher life, and where the psychic being resides, and how the psychic being is surrounded by the inner mind, the inner vital, the inner physical, and so on, and how through the psychic it is much easier to transcend the normal mental consciousness. All this is very graphically described in Canto 2. In Canto 3, Savitri's actual yogic journey is described. And Sri Aurobindo has described this in one of his letters as the central secret of my yoga, which is trying to lift the veil that hides the inner being. You get there, and once you get there, your yoga gets a fillip, a new dynamism, a new energy. How you get there, how you get through the veils that hide your inner being is something you have to find yourself. Sri Aurobindo has suggested various ways, and but he always said these are not the only ways. There are many, many traditional ways in India that you have many Babas, many Mahatmas, etc. They have given various ways, right from the Japa Yoga to Dhyana Yoga to Raja Yoga. Whatever yoga you find your inner being finds more conducive, more useful, you can take that up. The important point is to start the journey, to walk the distance, and to get beyond the surface being of man and go to the inner being. This is what is described, and the various experiences Savitri has as she undertakes this journey, all these are described in great detail in Canto 3. The psychologists of the future will find in this particular book a great deal of material which will fill the gaps and lacuna that you now have in a complete psychological theories. Now, this is done in great detail. Then you come to Canto 4, where already Savitri has transcended the mental, gone beyond the normal mental world. As you remember, towards the end of Canto 3, she meets people who say, "Where are you going, Savitri?" Savitri says, "I am in search of my soul." Then they look at each other and pass kind of comments about Savitri. "Oh, poor misguided woman, she doesn't know the soul is only a malfunctioning of a gland or a secretion of something. There is no such thing." And some people say that soul is only a shadow of God, there is no such soul, etc., etc. Then she meets another tribe of people, and Savitri asks them, "Can you show me the way to the soul?" He says, "We know we are very near the soul. We also started on the journey, but we thought this is enough. Now we are out. We are going back to teach the world, to tell them how to help themselves, how to change themselves, etc. We haven't yet been to the soul, but it's not. Do you think it's really worth it? We have been so far. We've got a PhD degree and so on. Should we start a kind of career on a world tour? You save the world, etc." Meets all these kinds of people. Sri Aurobindo sitting here in Pondicherry knew what the world is up to. He knew all kinds of characters. I don't know whether he personally met them, but all these, you will see, are characters residing in the higher regions of the mind. Beyond that, it is something extraordinary. Savitri meets three goddesses, and he calls them the Madonna of compassion, the Madonna of power, and the Madonna of light and wisdom. Now, you will find all these Madonnas are powerful. They have done a great deal to help mankind to evolve, to grow slowly, but somehow they are triple forces, where the Madonna of compassion and mercy can function, and she can help, but she can't save. She has no power. Where there is power, there is no wisdom. Where there is wisdom, where there is no compassion. So as a result, these goddesses are triple and not triune. They are not together. In other words, this is a word in Sri Aurobindo's comments on the overmental gods and goddesses. There are so many gods and goddesses, and these are all installed. Some of them are installed in temples. We go and worship them and so on. And humanity has been worshipping these gods with coconuts and flowers and whatever. We have been very sincere in this effort. But look what gods have done. They have not been able to help mankind to go beyond the present mess. The present mess is the best that these gods have created for us. So what is necessary, therefore, is to go beyond the range, as it were, of these gods of the overmental level to go to the supramental level. This is what is being hinted at. And now, after a kind of representative kind of survey of the beings of the overmental level, now you come to Canto 5. This is what we want to take up today, which is the finding of the soul. It's called the finding of the soul. Savitri is supposed to find a soul in this canto. Now, as I was saying yesterday, we did about first 34 lines. The first 34 lines describe what I called yesterday as the experience of the dark night of the soul. Now, the dark night of the soul is a particular phrase used by Christian mystics. I am not suggesting that Savitri is now going through necessarily a Christian experience. The dark night of the soul is a generic term. It's not a specific term. There are similar phases, there are similar experiences in Buddhist yogas, there are similar experiences in Advaitic yoga. So it's a kind of a generic term, a kind of a, as I said, when you are going very close to a source of power. Then what happens is suddenly the power swamps, as it were, the instrument that is receiving it, and the signals are not properly recorded. So that's the kind of feeling that Savitri is moving very close to the divine source of everything. But since she is very close, she is not functioned that close. So as a result, it looks like darkness. So it's the kind of first approach to the supreme reality, and I described that this is a process of what very often called the dark night of the soul. And after this experience, normally there is a kind of spiritualization of the person, and there is a kind of journey into the transcendental, merger into the transcendental, or peace or bliss or whatever. But Savitri had not come here for any of these. She had come here, as I read out to you yesterday, to hew new ways for man to conquer this battle, to conquer death. So somebody who has come here to conquer death and hew the ways of immortality cannot afford to understand it. But I have heard reactions from all parts of the world, in America, in England and so on, to whom you read it out for the first time. Do you mean to say this was all written down? It has been in print for so long, it's written by an Indian? Yes, sir, that's what I had to say. So it's unbelievable for people who are open that somebody could make poetry out of this, poetry out of, what happens in the subliminal, what happens in the subconscient, what happens in the inconscient, what happens in various places. He has not written a treatise on these, which he has done in Synthesis of Yoga and other places. He has written exquisite poetry out of it. That is something, we find extremely difficult to come to terms with. After that, as I said yesterday, we are on page 523. In about 5-6 lines from the top, let us say from lines 37, 38, in endless time her soul reached a wide end, the spaceless vast became her spirit's place. Now something happens. And something happens, I think, the kind of thing that has never happened to mankind ever before. And Sri Aurobindo goes ahead, confronts it, and turns it into poetry. What happens is, looks to be the place where, for the first time, Savitri transcends the overmental region and steps into the supramental space. This is the experience, and this is described here. At last, a change approached, the emptiness broke, a wave rippled within, the world had stirred. Once more her inner self became her space. There was felt a blissful nearness to the goal. Heaven leaned low to kiss the sacred hill, the sacred hill of consciousness that Savitri represented. Heaven stooped low to kiss this sacred hill. The air trembled with passion and delight. The air trembled. This is the friction that is created when the vibrations from the supramental world are coming in, and therefore he says the air trembled with passion and delight. And then in just 2 lines, he captures the essence of it. A rose of splendor on a tree of dreams. A rose of splendor on a tree of dreams. The face of dawn out of mooned twilight grew. This mooned twilight is the overmental region, because just as moon doesn't have his own light, its light borrowed from the sun, overmental doesn't have its own light. It simply borrows the light from the supramental and reflects that light. And since it is not its own light, it is not as bright as the light of the sun. So it is kind of moon, it's like twilight. And out of this twilight, out of this moon twilight, now the dawn comes. And how does he describe the dawn? Day came, priest of a sacrifice of joy into the worshipping silence of our world. Day comes as the priest preceptor of the great yajna of delivering the whole of mankind from ignorance. And this is the day. Day came, priest of a sacrifice of joy into the worshipping silence of our world. And how beautifully this day is described. He carried immortal luster as his robe, trailed heaven like a purple scarf, and wore as his vermilion caste mark a red sun. The vermilion caste mark, the day the priest preceptor wore the red mark, and that is the supramental sun shining in his forehead. That is the symbol. As if suddenly Savitri remembers she has seen this somewhere, because who is Savitri? She is the Supreme Mother herself. She was on earth as a human being, and for a while she has put on herself the veil of ignorance so that she could be fully human. But the memory of her earlier status is not completely obliterated. So suddenly she remembers, I know this, I know where I am. That's the kind of feeling. So she says, as if an old remembered dream came true, she recognized in her prophetic mind the imperishable luster of that sky, the tremulous sweetness of that happy air, and covered from mind's view and life's approach the mystic cavern in the sacred hill, and knew the dwelling of her sacred soul. There are in my experience, two kinds of sins one could commit with regard to Savitri. One is not read it at all. The second, read it very hurriedly and rush through it. This is what I am doing, so I feel very, very guilty, apologetic about it. But unless you are willing to give up whatever you are doing and willing to sit here for a couple of months, we have no other way. So we will take up for line by line for discussion. Here I can only indicate to you the major phases of movement in this particular canto. This is how he is describing the coming of the new dawn of the supramental consciousness into Savitri. There are lots and lots of it. We have no time to describe it, but that's what he is talking about. And as I told you, imagine a poet's problem of converting all this into poetry. How do you convert something so unique in experience? How do you convert it to poetry? That's the problem. And Sri Aurobindo does it so wonderfully well. Instead of, its material is different, everything is new. What it deserves, therefore, is slow, uh, kind of leisurely reading, going back again and again into it so that you kind of take these lines into your heart. That's the way Savitri can grow in us. This is only, as I said, a kind of tourist guide map. Here, you are here, this is the lake, this is the mountain, this is the tree, this is the temple, etc. But that's not really getting into there. So after this, what you really need to do is, they have now started several websites in the United States. So there are many people in the United States who all read Savitri at the same time every day. They decide now for this month, until we hear from the website once again, for the next 3 weeks, we will read Book 4, Canto 1. And they have also decided what time they will read. And since there is a time differential between the Eastern time and the Western time, they always say Eastern time such and such, Western time such and such. And there must be some people doing it. So that's the way to find some time for Savitri, and that's how all this study that we are doing here can help you only if this is done in our own private study. Otherwise, I feel that I am not doing what I should be doing, which is going slowly, taking each line, meditating on it, etc., etc. Okay. Then we come furthermore, page 525, the same experience. Now, what did Savitri experience there? Says, yet all the worlds, on second line on page 525, yet all the worlds and God himself were there, for every symbol was a reality and brought the presence which had given it life. All this she saw and inly felt and knew, not by some thought of mind, but by the self. Now Savitri is experiencing it. How does he understand it? Not through sight, not through hearing, but through identity. There is something called knowledge by identity. And therefore he says, all this she saw and inly felt and knew, not by some thought of mind. Mind she has left long behind. There is no mind there now to help her think. Not by some thought of mind, but by the self. By the self. The self identifies itself with the thing, experience, and gets that experience. And then there is a beautiful description, reminds you of some of the famous lines in the Upanishads. A light not born of sun, nor moon, nor fire. There was a light, but this is not the light that you and I know is either a light born of sun or moon or fire. There is no other light that we know. But here was a light that was not born from any of these. A light was a light not born of sun or moon or fire, a light that dwelt within and saw within. This is a light that dwelt within and saw within, shedding an intimate visibility, made secrecy more revealing than the word. Our sight and sense are a fallible gaze and touch, and only the Spirit's vision is wholly true. It is the vision of the Spirit is wholly true. This world where there is no other light but the light of the infinite is also described. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam, nema vidyuto bhanti, kuta ayam agnihi, tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam, tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. These are Upanishadic words. The only language in which can equal English in this power is Sanskrit, which we are all giving up because we don't want anything of the past. So we are giving up Sanskrit easily. And I have always found that by just quoting one Sanskrit verse, I suddenly am recognized as a great Sanskrit Pandit. Because we all have somewhere deep within us a great reverence for the language. But for some reason we have ignored it. And the beautiful translation Sri Aurobindo gives us, there the sun shines not, and the moon has no splendor, and the stars are blind. That's a place where stars are blind, the sun shines not, the moon has no splendor. There these lightnings flash not. How then shall burn the earthly fire? All that shines is but the shadow of his shining. All that shines is the shadow of his shining. All this universe is effulgent with his light. This is the light that Savitri experiences at this place. As thus she passed in that mysterious place, through room and room, through door and rock-hewn door, she felt herself made one with all she saw. All the gods and goddesses, all the mighty powers, everything that she saw in this looks like a carved temple. And she saw the gods and she became the gods. She became Brahma, she became Vishnu, she became Shiva, she became Krishna. Sri Aurobindo has described these are the four quaternary powers of the supramental region. Somewhere he says, the one is four forever in his supramental quaternary of being. Being, consciousness, force and Ananda. Being is Brahma, Vishnu is consciousness, Shiva is force, and Krishna is Ananda. These are the four godheads of the supramental world, and Savitri experiences their splendor. A sealed identity within her woke. She knew herself the beloved of the Supreme. These gods and goddesses were he and she. After all, she is the Chit Shakti of the Supreme. So all the gods and goddesses are just he and she, emanations of either he or she. The mother was she of beauty and delight. The word in Brahma's vast creating clasp. The world puissance on almighty Shiva's lap. The master and mother of all lives, watching the worlds their twin regard had made. See, Shiva and Parvati look at each other, and in this exchange of glance, the entire universe gets created, gets preserved, gets destroyed, universes come. That's the ancient idea of Shiva and Parvati and their exchange of glance. So he says, this is what Savitri now experiences. The master and the mother of all lives, watching the worlds their twin regard had made, and Krishna and Radha forever entwined in bliss, the adorer and adored, self-lost and one. Krishna and Radha, as you know, the symbol of psychic love, and Krishna is the Lord himself. In the last chamber, she still goes ahead. She's seen all these gods. She still is proceeding. In the last chamber, on a golden seat, one sat, whose shape no vision could define. Now, this is where the supramental gnosis is represented, seated there. How do you describe it? So Sri Aurobindo says, one sat, whose shape no vision could define. He says he doesn't say no shape, but the shape was such that no vision could define it. So he says, one sat whose shape no vision could define. Only one felt the world's unattainable fount. This is from where the world must have originated. This is the fount of all creativity, as you know. The world is a creation of the supramental. So he says, only one felt the world's unattainable fount, a power of which she was a straying force, an invisible beauty, goal of the world's desire, a sun of which all knowledge is a beam, a greatness without whom no life could be. Then This is the dynamic aspect. Then all departed into silent self. This is the static Satchidananda beyond the suprament level, and Savitri reaches that realm as well. Thence all departed into silent self, and all became formless and pure and bare. Then through a tunnel dug in the last rock, she came out where there shone a deathless sun. A house was there, all made of flame and light, and crossing a wall of doorless living fire, there suddenly she met her secret soul. And Savitri's secret soul is Adi Shakti, the mother of all, the home of the Adi Shakti. Chit Shakti, the transcendent mother of all, is the secret soul of Savitri. She is the Chittapas, the consciousness force of the divine. This is where this section ends. So the first section of book 5, Canto 5, as you can see, begins with a description of the dark night of the soul, and then you have a description of the tremendous, overwhelming experience of the supramental that Savitri experiences and fills her being with. Now, beyond that, now is described in a brief scene the merging of the psychic with the Jivatman. This is the process. The psychic merges with the Jivatman. And what the psychic is, what Jivatman is, etc., we have talked about it in the past, so I don't want to go back unless, we will again have to spend quite some time talking about it. As you know, the basic idea here is the Jivatman is the spark from the divine, the individual divine, as it were, and the Jivatman himself doesn't descend into the evolutionary world. The Jivatman sends an emanation or a projection. This is called the psychic element. And wherever there is any form, wherever there is any being, there is always a psychic element in it. Now, this psychic element, as we experience life, grief, sorrow, happiness, triumph, death, etc., through all this psychic element gradually grows. And this is the meaning, purpose of our life. And so, as it grows, through several lives, after several lives, it becomes a psychic being when it has a personality of its own. And so, then the psychic being, when the psychic element has become a psychic being, that's the time when you start looking for meaning for life, looking for there must be something beyond all that I am enjoying, there must be some meaning, some truth, where is it, etc. Is it in Tiruvannamalai, is it in Pondicherry, where is it? This kind of a search some people have, that is because their psychic being is not anymore happy living the kind of ordinary life people are living. It looks for meaning, it looks for significance, it looks for another kind of fulfillment. As the Upanishads say, the psychic being, once it is awakened, nalpe sukhamasti. There is no happiness in the finite. The sukham is always in the bhauma, in the infinite. Where is the infinite? How do I experience the infinite? This is the basic search, and this happens to most people until the psychic being and the Jivatman merge. This is a very cardinal, a very important experience in spiritual life, and that is described here. As you can see, a very brief section of about 55-60 lines. I will not, after this introduction, I won't stop in between and try to explain anything. I'll just read through some of the lines so that you can have a flavor of what this is all is. A being stood immortal in transience. This is the world of transient. This is the Jagat where everything changes. But in this world, this Jivatman is immortal in its transience, deathless dallying with momentary things, in whose wide eyes of tranquil happiness which pity and sorrow could not abrogate. Infinity turned its gaze on finite shapes. Observer of the silent steps of the hours, eternity upheld the minute's acts and the passing scenes of the everlasting play. The divine, in the spiritual vision, the Jivatman, all that happens here is a divine play, it's a divine Leela. And so, one way of looking at it, the problem is it's not right way or wrong way. You have to be where the Jivatman is and look at the world from there, Otherwise, if a rabid kind of revolutionary, do you mean to say with all the unhappiness in the world, problem of roti, kapda and makan, so many people are dying, so many people are being killed,